Good evening, everyone. Welcome to City Council. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence before we start the meeting. Thank you. I'll call the meeting to order. We have approval of the minutes for December the 4th. Anybody have any corrections, additions, or for December 4th minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Steph. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll have approval of the minutes for the special meeting December the 28th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. December 2017 financial report. Any questions on the financials?
I have a few questions on the financials. On our One Republic Bank credit card statement, looks like we're missing a page where it shows, the first page, it shows the balance, and the balance that was paid. However, it doesn't show any of the charges. We don't have the page that shows the charges. There's only one charge on there.
Public Bank.
So if we could just get a copy of that sent to us.
Yes, I can do that, no problem.
And then I have a question about the Verizon phone bill. I know we've asked this before, and I don't quite remember what it was, but I noticed on our Verizon phone bill, it's showing that all of the bills paid for the Verizon came out of the police account when you look at the bills paid. However, when you look at the receipt, it's showing Public Works, City Hall phones, Public Works phones, so I'm just wondering if that was an error.
Well, we do receive two different Verizon bills. One is for the police, and then the other one is for City Hall Public Works.
Right, but on the bills paid where it says Verizon, paid to Verizon, they're both saying it's police. Because the one for the 58721, I think, says city is billed to the city of LaGrange, but yet it shows on the bills paid that it came out of the police budget.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the 587, it's typed police on the bills paid, but it is Public Works.
Okay, because I think that actually came out, we just need to check and make sure it came out of the right budget.
Right.
Because I think that was, I don't think that was changed. And then also, there was a bills paid. It shows it's $120 to, looks like Baptist Occupational Center for $120 Public Works. However, on the general fund, on the budget, it actually shows that 120 went to CDL license. So I think that should be changed as well.
And which one was that, Shannon?
It's on, look on the first page of your bills paid. It shows, yeah, kind of down toward the bottom, it says Baptist Health Occupational Medicine, $120.
Okay.
Public Works, but then when you look on the, on your expenditure sheet, it actually shows that 120 was for CDL license.
Okay.
And then I had a question about our community center appropriations. The community center appropriations, and then also on the police computer maintenance, it looks like those two are off as well. When you look at what bills paid, when you look at the checks written, it's not itemized to the correct amount. For community center, I think it should be $10,910.21. And then on the computer maintenance for the police, it shows $909.60 on our statement of expenditures, but the check that it shows was written was 1,000, let's see if I can find that. Let me check. Yes, right there, the 1,026. And then I also wanted to see if it would be possible if you could send the council copies of the miscellaneous expense. I know we have a few in our papers here, but when you look at the total amount on the expenditures, it doesn't come up to that amount. So I was just wondering if you could send us copies of the receipts for the miscellaneous expenses.
In all departments?
I don't think there were, yes, please, in all departments. Just so that we can take a look at those, because I don't think we have all the receipts for those. And then I just have one last question, and it is actually about a receipt that we have here. I know we take care of police uniforms. Do we also do uniforms for Public Works?
Yes.
Yes.
We do, okay. That's all I have, thank you.
I have a question. How many people went to Chicago apparently? And who were they? That was one, I must have missed, because I didn't know y'all were going to Chicago. I probably, I'd broken something at the time.
It was the LaGrange Historic District that went to Chicago.
Okay, wasn't anybody here?
No.
I noticed you okayed a lot of, they stated that, maybe I'm in the wrong place. Who stated the contract?
That would be,
Part of the letter's gone. And it doesn't really say, but there's several.
the LaGrange Historic District.
Okay, that was the branch historic. Is that got to do with the 15,000 that's been spent so far on our budget? I noticed that the historic district had spent 15,000, I believe.
That was Main Street.
Is that Main Street?
The 15,000 was for Main Street.
I should've sworn it was. Well, okay, nothing else. Okay, so we pay for their food, all their food when they're gone and everything. Didn't know that. I noticed all of these room bills and all these restaurant bills and quite a bit of money. Why did we pay for their food? When I go to a training thing, we don't pay, last time I went to training, I got one meal paid for and nothing else. I just wondered why they got theirs paid for. I mean, it may have been set up 10 years ago, I don't recall it, but I just was curious.
Anytime you go, Gene, anytime we go, if you turn your tickets in, you'll get paid for it.
I did, Joe. I did turn my tickets in. I did not get paid. And I don't think Debbie did either. She said she didn't anyway. I guess everybody knows Debbie's in the hospital. Well, if you don't ask, you don't know, and I just happen
Right.
to see all these restaurant bills and hotel rooms and everything. Hotel, I understand. The food, no, I don't understand particularly.
Something I would like to suggest is when we do these, when we make these trips, we do these conventions and go on these learning experiences, maybe if we could have someone to come back that represents that trip to let us know what they, what they brought back with them that's going to benefit the city and to help us. Because I noticed we have gone over $3,000
Yeah, we
on
paid
our
out quite a bit.
historic, on our budget right now for that.
But yes, we did. Again, I was just curious.
Any other questions on the financials? Motion to approve.
I turned something over there.
Motion to approve financial.
Thanks, Steph. Thank you, Ted. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? It's a motion carries. Takes us to the mayor's open remarks. I just want to thank all the staff, the city council, police department, public works, LaGrange Utilities. We really came out with a good year in 2017, so I want to thank everybody for their hard work, and I appreciate it, and we're looking forward to 2018 for another successful year. So thank every one of you for what you do.
This might be a good time, Joe, that you tell them, that I've had a couple people ask me if the city's broke. I said, not that I'm aware of.
It is in better financial shape than we've ever been.
I said, I thought it was in pretty good shape, but I may be wrong.
Next, y'all got your LaGrange Utilities report you can read, and if you have any questions, we have a representative here for. Oh, did I miss public comment? I'm sorry. Need public comment. Anyone want to come forward for public comment? Thank you. Getting in too big a hurry, aren't I?
Bill Amline, 205 Maple Court. I'm going to answer your questions, what we brought back. Okay. By the state rules and regulations, preservation members are to have so much training per year. Okay. The reason with that training, what the city gets out of it is we get a certified local government designation. On all state applications for grants, one of the first questions on that application, are you a certified local government? Without answering yes to that question, you are put at the bottom of the pile. Okay? There were 4 members who went to the convention. I believe we spent 3 days up there. I also went as staff person, volunteer staff person. I paid my own room, but I did eat the city's food. So, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any questions you have at this time.
It was 4, did you say 4 people went?
4 members went, yes.
Members.
And they shared rooms.
They did. I noticed they said guest room. I didn't quite understand what that meant. A guest room. Thought maybe they had guests or something, but if they doubled up.
I don't know. I don't know how
Well, if they doubled up, or like you're saying.
they did. So there were only 2 rooms and 4 people.
I don't know, was it 2 rooms?
Now, if you'd like to lose that historic preservation or certified local government, just let the members know and they will dissolve the.
I think anybody wants to do that, but would like to know, what money is spent. I mean, when we go,
Yes, I know. When you all went, you did not share rooms. I did notice that.
no. I don't know, I was just particularly paying attention to the amount of food.
Chicago's very expensive.
Oh, I'm sure it is. But you would know that before you go, I would think.
Absolutely. Any questions? Thank you.
Bill, I know the Historic District Commission are all volunteers. It's one of those jobs that's pretty thankless, and I know y'all have a lot of responsibility doing that, so I appreciate the ones that's on that commission, so thanks very much.
I'd also like to say, I know that they have to be in a pretty difficult position at times, and we have to arm them with education and background in order to make the decisions that they make, and it is important that they go to these trainings, otherwise, they really wouldn't be able to put forth the city's best interests when they have these hearings and such on different changes in the historic district.
Thank you, Ann, I agree.
Well, once again, I want to state this. I didn't say anything about them going. That's great that they go. All I was questioning was the amount of food, the bills for the food. That's all I questioned.
Okay, now I guess we're ready for LaGrange utility report. Any questions? If not, we'll go to LaGrange Main Street program report. Karen, if you would, please. See, we have information here.
Yes, I've given you my report. Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you, Karen. Same to you.
2018 is going to be a very exciting year and a lot of things. So I ask for everybody's patience as we get through this. It's going to be a very interesting time downtown. You will notice We have one business that has already announced that they will be closing just because of business decisions to make. The 1887 Corner Store, she's going to be expanding her other businesses, so we aren't losing, but there is going to be a space open. There are spaces for sale now, so there will be some upheaval, but know that it's, with all growth becomes growing pains, so it will be good. So you'll still be able to find the things that you enjoyed at the corner store, just in some of the other shops in town. On a happy note, not that that's not happy, as far as expansions in the other businesses, in the A-list voting, we had, you'll notice in your report, we had some that won their categories, and so that is Big R's and Shannon's Barbecue, Red Pepper Deli, Rainy Day Resale, Karen's Book Barn, The Treasure Child, and LaGrange Coffee Roasters. These are Louisville voters. There were 8,500 voters, and I congratulate all of those businesses for winning. Plus, we had top fives for Gallery 104, Downtown Barber, and Inkwell Tattoo. So it goes to show that they are still strong, and we have strong base here. So congratulations to them. And then the last thing I'll say is the chocolate crawl is coming up February 10th. Please mark your calendars and spread the word. That's a fundraiser for Main Street, but it's also a good opportunity for people to get out and enjoy each other. It's a great day to just be able to visit. And are there any questions?
No, good job as always.
And since there's a full docket, I will have a seat. I'll know where to find me. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Morgan, we have you coming up next, please. If you want to.
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Morgan Sprague. I'm the Director of Municipal Law and Training with the Kentucky League of Cities. And first, I would like to apologize for my confusion in missing the December 4th meeting. There was a scheduling snafu, and that was all my fault, and I do apologize for that. But I'm here to answer any questions or to address the council on the different types of government. I understand there was a question about potentially moving to a city manager form of government, and that there were questions that the body may have. Hopefully, I can lend any expertise from the Kentucky League of Cities and provide you with information that might be helpful.
Thanks, Morgan. I was the one that brought it up at the ordinance meeting, or I'm on the ordinance committee, and asked that we just explore this idea. I think that, there's a couple of viable options as far as moving forward, but definitely had some confusion as to the process in which the city would need to go through in order to have a city manager and commissioner form of government. So I just was wondering if you could possibly walk us through just the steps that would take and what the timeline is of that, because I understand it is a fairly lengthy process.
Absolutely. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the process for a referendum vote generally. Changing a city form of government requires a referendum vote under 83A. So what that means is that there's nothing that could be done until the general election, and it would have to be decided by a majority of the voting citizens in the city of LaGrange. So that process is kind of one where the council, if this is something that the council wanted to do, could request a referendum vote on that particular issue by resolution. And that resolution in and of itself is enough for a referendum vote to put it before the LaGrange, the citizens of LaGrange. And you would have to take that referendum, submit it to the county clerk so that it could then be on the ballot for a decision in August. Now, the way they have to be drafted is also kind of key, because a yes vote, the way it's drafted means that a yes vote has to be in favor of the proposition proposed by the council, if that makes sense. So, and I think that that's written into statute to avoid any tricky wording, to try to make sure that it's as clear as possible, so that if someone votes yes, they're voting for the proposition, and they know which way they're going.
And can that be during any general election, like any year, or does it have to be a year in which council or mayor are on the ballot?
It's a great question. It can be during any general election, but it has to be a general election.
Okay.
Well, I missed this somehow. I'm not on the ordinance committee, so I don't always know what they talk about, and I may have possibly missed it. So, a resolution, but we would have to have a majority pass that, right?
Yes, ma'am. A majority
Because
of the
this is all
voting
new to
council
me. I don't
members.
know for sure what they're even talking about, but.
We're just exploring. I just wanted more information on the idea. Nobody's trying to squeak
No, I
through
didn't
a
say that,
resolution
but
on
people
their.
aren't on that committee, we don't know half the time what's going on.
And how many council members or commissioners would there then be if there was a city manager commissioner form of government?
There would be 4 commissioners and 1 mayor. But the mayor is not a strong executive. The mayor is then only recognized as the executive and the head of the city. For example, for the governor in a time with a military issue, the mayor is recognized as the head. Aside from that, the mayor and the commission in the city manager form of government, they share both the legislative and the executive authority.
Okay. And did I hear too, or I don't know where I heard this. Does the mayor actually run, or is this the mayor an elected commissioner who is then appointed as mayor?
The mayor does run as mayor.
Okay.
Yes.
And you just said a mayor and a manager?
Yes, ma'am. In the city manager form of government, the city decides it could be a multitude of reasons, that they want to move towards a city manager form of government. The city manager would then run government to the extent that the commission and the mayor would authorize them to do so.
Why would you need a mayor and a manager?
Well, in that form of government, the mayor is not the executive, similar to what you have now. You would have commission members, you would have the mayor, and they would all compose the Board of Commissioners.
So something that's coming up tonight would be null and void, really. We're wanting to vote on something tonight, and it sounds like they're wanting, I'm not sure who brought this up or how much it's been discussed, but,
I'll say I was probably in the minority in wanting to hear about this, but we discussed it in ordinance committee. There were lots of questions about it. And in order to have those questions answered, it was suggested, or I suggested maybe someone from KLC could come just to clarify the process. One of the questions being, obviously, this is a long-term process. Has any city ever gone from a well-compensated mayor to a commissioner form of government where then the mayor's salary is downgraded and then replaced with a city manager?
Right, so your question is whether cities have gone from the mayor-council form of government to a city manager form of government?
Yes, and I know the answer. I would think that's a yes, that they have. But I think the concern for myself and for council is we would not, if in 2 or 4 years, if council decided they thought this might be a better path to choose, we would not at that time want to have a mayor making the salary we're proposing tonight and a city manager probably making more. So I guess what we would want to know is, has there ever been a situation in which the mayor's salary is then downgraded, for lack of a better word?
I wish I could tell you off the top of my head, and I cannot. I
Okay.
was not prepared for that question. I apologize.
Well, I think that's a concern for all of us here. We wouldn't want to move forward in that direction if it then meant,
Well, and the only thing to remember about elected officials is, as I think you know, in changing the mayor's salary or proposing to amend the mayor's salary now, you wouldn't be able to propose to amend the mayor's salary while the sitting mayor was
Correct.
currently in his seat. You know, you'd have to do that before an election. So I think the careful, deliberative process that y'all are considering is very appropriate to weigh these options, because it's a very real possibility that you would inadvertently end up in a situation where you were paying too higher salaries if you're not careful and if it's not timed appropriately or very carefully.
I don't understand why they're even looking into it, but that's fine. We look into stuff all the time, but it wouldn't make sense to up the salary for the mayor, which is going on right now, to this great big salary, and then turn around and have a manager that you're paying a large salary to. I mean, who's gonna run for mayor at a high salary knowing in 2 years they're gonna get their salary lowered and they're not gonna be anything other than like a city council person, really, if you get right down to it. But it's just my opinion. I
I
wasn't
would
in
say
on
it
the
would be the same
conversation.
people that that'll do it for $12,000 a year now.
Do what?
I said I would say it would be the same people that would run for $12,000 a year that would run again if the salary was lowered.
Are you-
Maybe, but
are you able to speak or to any what are the benefits you see to either form, mayor, commissioner, mayor, council, or mayor, commissioner with a city manager? Do you see benefits on either side that aren't there on the other side? Or drawbacks, either, benefits or,
Disadvantages also.
There are pros and cons to each one. On the plus side, if the city is looking for a city manager with specific experience, for example, with specific accounting experience or specific experience in I don't know, with running a sanitation program or with running a public works program or managing various, entities. If a city were interested in finding someone with that experience, you can't, there's no mechanism to require that a mayor running for office, and please, sir, I think you're very qualified, but to say that a mayor must have this experience, you can't say that. So if a city were to decide that they wanted certain criteria in someone to run the city and to manage the city in that way, then they can do that with a city manager position. The city manager is also an employee. So if the city were to follow certain steps, they would be able to hold that person accountable. Now the flip side is when the mayor's accountable to the people. So, the city manager is not. The other issue is that a city manager can still be difficult to manage because what they're given the executive authority to the extent that the council or the commission and the mayor gives it to them. And there can easily be situations, depending upon who the individual is, where you fall into a not my job syndrome, and there can be tension when the city manager is uncomfortable with the decision or uncomfortable doing something, and they decide to construe certain duties very literally. And I think we've probably all had that with employees in various roles at one time or another. Yes, ma'am.
And the city manager does not have to be a citizen, is that correct?
That is correct.
So basically, the mayor, the council would have to be citizens. The city manager is not, but the city manager would be the executive authority, who is not a citizen of LaGrange.
That's correct. And that has happened in other cities.
Is there a cap on how much the city manager position could get compensated for their duties?
No, not by statute.
There is one for the mayor, correct?
There is one for the mayor, yes, and for council members as well.
In those situations, do the council members tend to then be, I would imagine if there's less council, or now they would be commissioners. Are they then typically more involved in the day-to-day of the city, more so than on a council, or is it still seen as more the same? I mean,
They're more involved because.
They're more involved day to day.
Yes, because the commissioners and the mayor in that form of government share the executive and legislative functions. And the city manager is still accountable to them for hiring, firing, some of the day-to-day job duties. They still have to report. They're still limited in their authority to act. And the commissioners and the mayor in that form of government are more actively involved.
do the commissioners, are they assigned a district within the city, or do they still get elected by the city at large like we currently are?
I believe they're still elected by the city at large.
Okay. And they stay nonpartisan, or do they have to switch to partisan?
Well, that's from city to city. That has nothing to do with a form of government.
Okay.
That has to do with the city's decision.
Okay.
Well, the manager seems to be doing a lot. What is the mayor doing? I mean, what's the purpose of a mayor?
The mayor is in that form of government, the mayor serves as a member of the Board of Commissions, a voting member at all times, not just to break ties or anything. And the mayor they lead the commission meetings, and they are also the ceremonial figurehead for the city in that form of
Just for
government.
looks, basically. Just so you can say you have a mayor, but not really doing anything in particular.
Well, I don't think they're doing more or less than the other commissioners in that form of government, Gene. It's just they're
No,
not
it sounds like they are.
They're doing the same work as the commissioners.
So why wouldn't it just be called a commissioner and a manager?
I did not write the
Purpose of a
statute. I'm not
manager
quite
and a
sure
mayor.
about that.
It seems a little silly, but
Well, Gene, there's
Whatever.
also a
Every-
commission form of government where there are city commissioners and there's a mayor, but the mayor, under that circumstance, also is a voting member of the legislative body and presides over those meetings. And there's no city manager in that form of government. It's just mayor.
well, that makes more
commissioner.
sense, but than having two and one not really having all that much authority. I don't know, I'm just hearing this stuff tonight, so I really don't know anything about it, but
Well, and I do think it's difficult to kind of consider the mayor's role in that form of government as just the chairman of the Board of Commissioners and, as I said, the ceremonial head of the city. Especially when you've historically operated under a government that has a more strong separation of powers, where the council members are legislative and the mayor is a strong executive. I think it's more difficult to understand, to wrap your mind around it.
Morgan, I had a question over here. Thanks for being here, by the way. You mentioned a city manager's not a citizen or resident, or potentially could, be a situation where they're not a citizen or resident, but they're also not elected, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
They are appointed by the commissioners and the mayor according to ordinance.
Okay. And you mentioned there was no cap on the salary of a city manager, but do you know what the cap is on the mayor's salary for a fourth-class city? Do you have any idea?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. I thought it was 72 or something like that, but I didn't know if you knew.
I don't know.
Okay. And then rather than 8 city council members, essentially moving to that form of government would eliminate 4 of the city council members from this role, correct?
Sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I don't have any other questions. I appreciate you coming. I know it's really cold and dark, and I appreciate you coming just to answer and clarify some more on this.
It's my pleasure, and if y'all don't mind, I'll go ahead. I did bring cards. That way, if there are any other questions, y'all can call me, email me, whatever. I'm happy to help and to answer questions however you may need.
Thank you.
What you learn?
Got one, Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave you my life.
Thank you, Morgan. Steve, that'll take us to Resolution 1, 2018, if you would, please.
Thank you. Commonwealth of Kentucky, City of LaGrange, Resolution 1-2018, a resolution of the City of LaGrange, Kentucky, authorizing Mayor Davenport to make application for and, upon arrival, to enter into an agreement with the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security to execute any documents which are deemed necessary by KOHS to facilitate and administer the project and to act as the authorized correspondent for this project. Whereas the City of LaGrange, Kentucky desires to make an application for law enforcement protection program funds for a project to be administered by Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, whereas it is recognized that an application for an approval of Kentucky Office of Homeland Security funds imposes certain obligations and responsibilities upon the City of LaGrange. Now therefore be it resolved this 3rd day of January 2018 by the City of LaGrange, Kentucky. Mayor Davenport is hereby authorized to execute and furnish all required documentation, including a memorandum of agreement, as may be required by KOHS for the furtherance of the above referenced project, and to act as the authorized correspondent for said project, done this 3rd day of January 2018 on a motion made by blank and blank.
Thank you, Steve. You're welcome. Is there any questions on the resolution? Chief, you probably got more about this because I worked with you through this, so if you want to come forward, I appreciate it. And
All federal grants are run through the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, so in order for us to apply for grants, we have to have this on file. Or we won't even be considered for a grant. And then, right now, I'm writing a grant for new body armor for some of our officers who are, their body armor is due to be renewed, and it's a full match, 100% payoff, but we have to have this in place before they'll consider us. And that's just one grant we're writing, but it'll cover us for the whole year. We do this every year. It covers us for the whole year if we write a grant. And Homeland Security is the executor for the feds, and we have to have this on file, so that's what they said.
So when it says the project, this one would be.
It'd be for, the one
body
I'm right now is for body armor for some of the officers that, or body armors are due to be replaced. Every 5 years, they'll pay to replace their body armor, and a few of them are coming up on that date. So in order to apply for the grant, I have to have this in place to send with the grant application, or they won't even consider us. So that's what that.
Thank you.
any other questions? Do we have a motion on Resolution 1-2018?
I'll make a motion to accept Resolution 1-2018.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Drake. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. Takes us to 10, written determination for disposal of personal property.
Thank you. Whereas Kentucky Revised Statute KRS 82.083 states in pertinent part, 1, a city may sell or otherwise dispose of any of its real or personal property. 2, before selling or otherwise disposing of any real or personal property, the city shall make a written determination setting forth and fully describing A, the real or personal property, B, its intended use at the time of acquisition, C, the reasons why it is in the public interest to dispose of it, and D, the method of disposition to be used. Therefore, the following written determination is hereby set forth and made. A, the city owns certain personal property, specifically a 2009 Ford E350 bus, VIN number 1FDEE35L29DA57068. B, the city intended to use this bus as a public bus vehicle at the time of acquisition, and that intended use was fulfilled. C, it is in the public interest to dispose of this property. The cost of continued storage exceeds the value to the city. D, this vehicle will be sold at public auction. This written determination is hereby adopted as true by the legislative body of the city of LaGrange, Kentucky.
Thank you, Steve. Does the council have any questions or discussion on the written determination for disposal of personal property?
I have a question on D, with the public auction portion. Would this kind of be the annual, I guess it's not necessarily annual, but we've had some sales in the spring where we've let go of some items. Is that when this would kind of fall into that category?
Yes,
Okay.
I think we've actually sold one bus through public auction before. Actually got a pretty good price for it, so.
You know how the sale will be made public to the public? I guess will it be in the newspaper or
Yes, it'll be,
something?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
sure, it will, yes. Any other questions? We'll need a motion, a second for,
Make a motion that we adopt this.
thank you, Gene.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Yeah. Second reading, public hearing for ordinance 19-2017.
Thank you. Ordinance number 19, Series 2017, City of LaGrange, Kentucky. Ordinance amending mayor's compensation. Whereas the City Council of the City of LaGrange, Kentucky has the authority pursuant to statute to enact ordinances relating to the city, and whereas as of July 1, 2008, the mayor of the City of LaGrange was compensated at the rate of $10,040 per month, payable in equal monthly installments for a total compensation of $12,480 per year, and that rate has remained in effect since that date. And whereas it is desirable that specific terms concerning an increase to the mayor's compensation be memorialized, now therefore be it ordained by the City of LaGrange, Kentucky as follows. As of January 1, 2019, the mayor of the City of LaGrange shall be compensated at the rate of $4,583.33 per month, payable in equal monthly installments for a total compensation of $55,000 per year. The mayor of the City of LaGrange shall not be eligible for the same benefits package as non-elected public employees of the City of LaGrange. All ordinances in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. This ordinance shall take effect upon its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Thank you, Steve. We have a motion on ordinance 19-2017.
Motion to accept ordinance 19,
We're
series.
not gonna discuss this at all? We're just gonna pass it?
We have to accept
We
first.
have a motion, a second,
Thought he was
to
accepting.
open the ordinance up, and then we'll have a motion
Okay.
going to public hearing.
I thought he was making a motion to accept it. Go ahead.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. Got a motion and a second. We need a motion to go into public hearing, please.
Motion to go into public hearing.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're now in public hearing. We'll welcome anybody to come forward that would want to speak on this ordinance.
Yes, this is the same ordinance that has been changed that you all heard last month at the city council meeting. I guess my question is that it's been changed. Did that happen through committee, or how did that change take place?
Ordinance.
I've been through a special meeting.
No, you had a special meeting for the first reading. Was there an ordinance committee meeting between the first reading and the last city council meeting to make those changes?
There's not an ordinance committee meeting, no, sir.
There was not. Back in November, you all didn't even give a motion to an ordinance to annex because it had not gone through a committee. And now you've brought forward another ordinance that was changed without a committee process. So I guess my question is that the changes that were made, are we talking about legalities here? What are we talking about not having this run through committee?
Quite honestly, I thought they had a meeting. I thought the ordinance committee had met and then we were voting on it. I don't even know who changed it. Who actually decided to change this? If y'all didn't meet, where'd it come from?
Good question, Gene.
Sure. I'll address that. Just from our feedback from our last discussion, I did reach out to the city attorney. As far as it seemed like the main hangup was the benefits portion, specifically the retirement portion. So I asked that if we remove that, could we have a first reading for discussion for tonight?
Mr. Kamer, did you not talk to any other council members about this change? That you were going to talk to the city attorney about this?
I'm not legally able to talk to other council members about specific changes like that.
That is correct. Thank you. Also tonight, you have a council member that is running for mayor that probably should abstain from this vote. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
How can we vote on something?
Mary Ann Smith, 512 Kentucky Avenue. As you all know, I was here in December, and that ordinance 18 was not passed because the mayor broke the tie. Then we had the special meeting on the 28th of December for the first reading of this ordinance, and this is ordinance 19. I have several issues with that other ordinance. It seems like there's things that are left out. We didn't talk about, I went back to find the ordinance where the current mayor got his salary, the one that's referred to in ordinance 18 and 19 from 2008. It doesn't specify any length of time that they have to serve in the office. I'm a lifelong member of the city of LaGrange, and I never remember a full-time mayor. I'm assuming that at this salary of $42,520 increase should be a full-time, and I don't know whether it's full-time. Can anybody tell me if it's full-time or not?
It better be, for that price.
It is? Well, then, how do you propose that it can be full-time when the compensation with the state retirement system if you're a full-time employee of the city of LaGrange, you have to pay in to the retirement system. So how are you going to, where's the money gonna come from to pay for all this, for this new mayor? And now, because you had the Morgan that just talked, we're gonna have to have a city manager also?
Good question.
And then, did anybody take into consideration that if this new proposal of the current governor goes through about the taxes, probably in 2019, the city will have to pay an extra $179,508, 51%, for an increase into the retirement system. That's a lot of money for a little town like this. And I don't know whether you have thought all this through, where all this money's gonna come from. We're already in debt out at the Oldham Reserve, and it's a problem. It's a problem for me as a taxpayer, that all this money is being spent. And I thought that Morgan just said that if you increase this salary, then in 2 years or 4 years, you'll decrease the mayor's salary and then hire a city manager. So I don't see that for the taxpayers, it's a win situation.
How much did you say, 100 and what?
$179,508 if Bevan's plan goes into effect. That's a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to come forward? Now we'll take a motion to go out of public hearing.
So move.
Thank you, Gene.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? Motion carries. Now out of public hearing, we're ready for discussion by the council.
I think everybody knows I'm not for this. Number one, I didn't know we were having a meeting without anything being discussed. I thought the ordinance committee had met. That's why I'm against these committees. Only certain people know what's going on, the rest of us don't. But
Jean, I
anyway,
would like to
I
say.
do not think that you jump from $1,200 a month or $1,040 a month to, I'm not sure how it was broke down, but you're asking us to raise it to $55,000. That's a heck of a raise. And yes, it should be full-time. There's no doubt about that. It should be. But when they open this up, which people can run for it this year, this election, is that not correct? Okay, they can sign up to run. I mean, I don't know who's going to be interested in becoming a mayor because, oh, they're going to pay $55,000 now. Maybe they won't, maybe they will. I don't know. But we've never, and some people said some of the old mayors did do full-time. Joe did full-time. But I've been under mayors that did not do full-time, or not even came close to half full-time. But you have no guarantee that if you vote for a certain person because he's your Uncle Harry or your whatever, they're going to come in here and spend 8 hours a day at City Hall.
I will say,
And I would also like to say that I think it should be a raise. It's ridiculous what we've been paying them. That's not even anyways near close. If they'd said 30,000 or something like that, I probably would have gone right along with it. And I'm probably the only one that's against it. But I think it's too much. It's way too much.
I will say, as I said last month when I talked to KLC about a full-time mayor's compensation, they said that they did not consider any mayor, whether or not they made $1 or 72,000 and some change, it's the same role. It's the role of mayor. It's not full-time mayor for this city and part-time mayor for that city.
Well, the same, but we also have a problem. I just found out tonight that you all have been discussing a manager, a commission, and all of that. What would be the sense of getting a mayor in for 55,000, then you all want to change it and have a mayor and a manager?
Nobody said we want to change anything. One council member asked if we could have KLC
Yeah, but
come in, and Ms. Sprague
heard
came in
some
to give
talk.
some information.
I've heard there's more than one.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm not one of them, I'll tell you that much. But the fact of the matter is,
Neither am I.
we're trying to be a competitive city. This amount we're suggesting,
Yeah, I think
we
we
lowered
should.
we lowered the benefits as was requested from last month's meeting, and we're trying to broaden the number of people that might be interested in this position, and we're actually trying to raise the mayor's salary to be close to the city clerk's salary. And that's no disrespect at all to anybody, but what we're paying the mayor is somewhat laughable to most cities in this Commonwealth, and this has been talked about for years. And I know it's difficult to make the changes, but we felt like this was a reasonable number.
Well, I think that this body here, the biggest part of them, there might have been a few people that didn't say so, but our problem was that we were paying the work, other than the city clerk, we're paying the people that worked in the office way too much money. And how it got to be like that, no, I don't know.
Dean, we really here to
But-
discuss the mayor's compensation,
Well, I
not
am, but
not the
they're
people in
saying-
office,
they're
okay?
saying- He's the one that brought it up, Joe. He said
I'm just
himself.
saying, we're here to discuss the mayor's compensation.
And I'm answering what he said. That shouldn't be the reason that we raise the mayor's salary, because we're trying to get it above everybody else that works in the office. That's a silly reason. Lower the others, but don't raise the mayor's. And we should. I'm not saying that. We should raise the mayor's salary, because that is ridiculous. $1,200. I mean, that's totally, well, it's not even $1,200. But 55,000 is just ridiculous the other way.
It's
And that's just my opinion. That's just me.
Gene, I make $12,480 a year.
Yeah,
So
12,000.
it'll be a $42,520 increase over what I make.
I know.
So if that'll answer your question, so.
I'd like to make a statement. I know those of you that were here last time, I was very vocal about this. And I just want to make it clear before the vote is taken that I am not against a raise, but I am against a raise of 55,000. So I want to make it clear that I am not against a raise for the mayor, but I just cannot go along with that. I make every decision the best of my ability for the citizens of LaGrange. I know that we all do, and we are all here to serve the citizens of LaGrange. But I just want to make it clear, and I want it on record, that I'm not against a raise, because the mayor does a lot. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I agree. That's the same as what I just said.
Well, I wanted to say it myself.
Well, okay.
Trey, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
KLC, when you called them, we can not pay the benefit package? Or did they tell you that? I think by federal law, if they're full-time employees, you have to, don't you?
Mayor's not an employee,
Mayor's not an employee.
an elected official, just like you are.
And that was one of the issues last month. I think actually, Mr. Humble, you made the point that that was a lot of money for benefits. So that's what the revised ordinance shows. That's no longer part of that, as Mr. Kamer mentioned.
Well, this may or may not
Well,
have
right,
anything to do with it.
because from our meeting last month to our meeting this month, if we would have approved that with benefits, it would have went up even more, because under Bevan, it's going from 19% to 28% that we have to pay into pension, and then it's even going higher than that on the police department.
Is there a concern that I'm sensing that there's a concern that if the mayor's salary is too high, that might prohibit other people who are retired from running for the position? Is that what you're suggesting?
No.
That's what I'm getting
just
from
saying
some
there's-
comments I've heard today.
Right. I just don't want to, I don't want us to approve or disapprove something that is not legal.
Well, and let me just tell you this, I worked for the school board for 9 years, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, but when I retired, they said I would not get my retirement because I was a city councilwoman. Now, I didn't check into it. Actually, I'm going to, because city council does not pay any retirement to me or anything like that. And yet I have not collected retirement, and I retired going on 3 years ago because the Board of Education at that time told me that. But I'm going to look at, I'm not blaming you. But I am going, so, I mean, that's the same thing in a sense. I mean, I don't get retirement because I'm a city councilwoman in the city. Never did make any sense, but I figured they knew what they were talking about, so I don't know about the mayor. You may be right. I mean, I don't know.
I would like, and I'd like to ask Steve to confirm this for me as well, but anytime we're talking about an elected official, whether or not it's council or mayor, and we specifically looked at mayor, not council, and our council is higher than some councils as far as our compensation, and it's lower than some councils in other cities as well. But before that elected official, I guess before we have that election, you could always change that mayor's or council's compensation. So in the event that we did, that this council at some point moved forward with the city manager proposal, the mayor's compensation could be lowered along with the city council's as well to help pay for that position. So as far as saying that we're locked into this for forever, we're not.
And Trey, I just want to say, because I'm talking against this, I'm not you. You thoroughly investigated all this and did a wonderful job. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I want to be sure that people know that, because you did.
I would like to respond to Mr. Lamline's comment. I am the council member that has filed to run for mayor. And I made the decision to run for mayor well before this ordinance was brought up. So I just want for the record to know that my decision to run for mayor was not based on this. I'm in whether it passes or not, and I've always been in.
I'd like to just say, I think I understand the concern that this is a huge jump, but I think it is something that should have been increased at least incrementally all along. And we as a council, or whoever decides to vote for it, are in favor of just going ahead and taking that big jump to bring the pay up to reflect the professionalism required with the job, the demand needed for the job. I mean, let's face it, yes, some days it may not be a full 8 hours, but there's a lot of days when it's 10, 12, and some when it's even 24/7 if an emergency of some type comes up. We are asking somebody to run for mayor to lead the city, to head the police department, public works, economic development, our parks department, administrative. We're a big city. We have grown a lot. I've lived here now almost 17 years, and the size of the city has grown. Our economic impact within the state is very large. And I think the pay moving forward needs to reflect the seriousness of the position and the demands of the position. And that is why I'm going to vote for it.
The sad part is I've lived here 57 years. And yeah, I know I'm an old woman, but the problem is we have no guarantee that we'll have someone run and then be a professional mayor, because this is a small town and people don't always vote because they're wanting a professional mayor. We have no guarantee whatsoever. And I'm for a raise, as I said before. I just don't think we need to jump so far. We cannot make up however many years it's been in 1 year. And I'm voting no.
With no more discussion, we'll call for the question. Roll call vote.
Jason,
Yes.
Stephanie,
No.
Shannon,
Yes.
Trey,
Yes.
Jean,
No.
Ann,
Yes.
Tad. No. 4 yes, 3 no.
Motion carries.
Hope you get a good one.
Okay, this is not, this is strictly for the council, not for. Brooke, could you come up, please? I thought she had already.
You want me to say a little something?
Go ahead.
Mayor, I'll just say that we've got a application to amend binding elements concerning Sky Automotive LLC. The project address is the 700 block of North Highway 53 in LaGrange. It's PZ-17-034 is the docket number. We're going to hear tonight from the people with Planning and Development Services for the county to talk about the recommendations that have been made, and the city council will then have a choice to follow either Part 12 or Part 13 on tonight's docket as to how to act on these recommendations, but we'll need to hear what those recommendations are first.
Stephen, I just want to confirm that for a resolution, there does not have to be a public hearing, correct? It does not have to be advertised and.
For a resolution, no, but if there's a ordinance that's read tonight, then there'll need to be a public hearing before the second reading of that ordinance. And the ordinance is only necessary if the city council's going to reject part or all of the recommendations. If they're going to accept the recommendations of planning and zoning, then the resolution that's been prepared will occur tonight.
Okay, so I just want the city council members to be aware that I did not advertise for this meeting and I did not send out adjoining property owner notices because that's not required for a resolution. That is required for a reading of the ordinance. So if you do decide to have the public hearing, then I will notify all adjoining properties and put a notice in the newspaper for a public hearing for the second reading of the ordinance. Excuse me just a moment. Sorry for the delay.
Mr. Emery, while we're waiting, I had a question. Just to clarify this, because it sounded like you said if the council was potentially going to support this, then the resolution would be read. I think is what I heard. and if the council might reject it or have issues, partial rejections, that the ordinance would be read. Is that what you said? But
Yes, sir.
if we don't know how we're going to vote, how are we going to know which one that we would do? Because we wouldn't actually know that until the votes came in,
Well-
whether it was supported.
And
I'm a little
see,
confused.
that's why there's the wonder of the agenda in this situation, because you all are going to listen first before we take any action on 12 or 13 to the report from Planning and Development Services, and I'm sure we're going to hear from the applicant as well. At that point, you all will need to make a decision about whether you're going to act on number 12 or number 13 first. You know, you're either going to be asking that a resolution be read and or accepted, or you're going to ask for the introduction of an ordinance for a first reading if your intent is to reject. Unfortunately, these are the only two choices we have available to us, and this also because of the timeline that's made available to us.
Sure.
We don't have any other way of doing this.
I
I
understand.
wish there was a better way
Sure.
to do this.
I understand.
But
I just-
we're hampered with the way that the code for planning and zoning has been drafted.
Right. Now,
And we've also accepted that, so we're of course bound by that as well.
are you saying there could be the potential that people aren't totally sure, and I don't know yet until we hear of this, but that they could move to hear the ordinance, but then next month still support it and pass it?
If you support the ordinance, you're going to be rejecting
Okay.
the recommendations of the Planning Commission.
I see.
If you're choosing to accept the recommendations of the Planning Commission, then there's a resolution available. Now, having said that, we have another meeting that we can still do this in. And so you could decide not to have a reading of a resolution and not to have a first reading of the ordinance. You could theoretically choose to have a first reading of the ordinance before the next regular city meeting if you decided to. So, I mean, there is still the option to say no to both right now at tonight's meeting. It's still workable. The timeline's still workable. If there were a better way, and if there is, and we can figure out a way to do it better, I'd love to do it in a different way, but I'm unfortunately hampered in procedure based on the way the rules are written now.
Well, I'll hear what they have to say. I just want everybody on the council to, be comfortable with what's being presented and whatever their vote might end up being, whether it's this month or next month. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, and you don't have to feel forced tonight. I know that for almost everybody here, this is probably a brand-new issue, something that you haven't faced before. But I have to give this applicant an opportunity for due process too. And so that's why we've given you all the options that you have instead of forcing you or pigeonholing you to make one particular choice.
Just a quick question. Is this the same resolution we were presented in December?
There was not a resolution presented in December, but
We
it's
were
the
asked to
same-
make a resolution
Yeah,
stating this
correct.
same thing. And we,
I needed to have directions from you all about, do I present one or the other or both at this meeting? And the decision at the
Okay.
last meeting was to have a resolution and ordinance prepared and ready.
got it. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something different than what, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you all, Brooke Beeman, Oldham County Planning and Development Services. I'm one of the planners with Planning and Zoning. You do have your staff reports, and this is basically just a review of the staff report and what we discussed in December. An application was filed by Sky Automotive LLC requesting an amendment to the binding elements attached to the original approval of a zoning map amendment and development plan in May and June of 1997. So your action tonight is either adopt the resolution to accept the amendment to the binding elements as recommended by the Planning Commission, or ask for a public hearing for next month. And then you can decide whether you want to adopt the resolution at that point, or adopt the ordinance to reject the recommendation of the Planning Commission and either apply new binding elements or keep the existing binding elements from 1997. So I'll try to clarify that as much as possible throughout the short presentation. Did want to give you an aerial view of the site. You can see this is located off of Highway 53. It is a vacant piece of property. It is to the west of the York Cliff Apartments, and it'll share that same access there. and it is just over half an acre as well. This is the current zoning of the property, so it is in fact Zone C3. There is commercial to the north and to the east, as well as the south. So, you know, it is bounded by commercial, and it's also bounded by industrial to the west. So on May 27, 1997, the Oldham County Planning Commission recommended approval of the zoning map amendment from C1 to C3 to the LaGrange City Council for a veterinary office. These are the minutes of the meeting, and I did include that in your staff report. But the reason I included this was to make it clear that the reason why we're here today is because back when the Planning Commission recommended this approval, they made one motion to approve the zoning change, recommend approval of the zoning change and the development plan. Nowadays, we just recommend approval of the zoning change, the zoning map amendment. Development plans are not reviewed at the legislative body level. So you would not see typically a development plan come before you, just a zoning change. So it was, this is why this case is a little bit different, because there was one motion, so you had to review the binding elements at that time that the Planning Commission recommended. So the LaGrange City Council approved the zoning change from C1 to C3 on June 26, 1997 with the following binding elements. And the LaGrange City Council did revise the binding elements that were proposed by the Planning Commission. One of those binding elements in particular that the applicant wants to see changed is number 3, which says the use of the property is limited to principally permitted uses in C1 zoning district and the proposed veterinary office and kennel. And so that was recorded with the certificate of land use, which limits this tract to all the uses in C1, and then under C3, the only use that they're permitted to do is the veterinary office and kennel. And I know, Anne, you wanted to see this comparison in December. This is basically the comparison of C1 local business district and C3 general business district permitted uses. So there are quite a few more permitted uses in C3. What the City Council and Planning Commission did by limiting the C3 uses to permitted to the veterinary office and kennel excluded all of the other uses in C3 that are not in C1. So, as you can see, some light industrial uses, there's vehicle sales and display, which is what the applicant is proposing to do. Retail and personal service establishments over 100 square feet. And as I stated, it's only about a half-acre lot, so a lot of these uses would not fit on this tract.
Is there a requirement in planning and zoning for, like, do you have a list of those up there that can fall under C3? Is there a list of ones that can fall under C3 that would go on would be approved for a half-acre lot?
Well, every use, you know, anytime there's a change of use in the property, we as planning staff will review that to make sure that it meets our standards for parking, for impervious surface calculations, things of that nature for detention. And a lot of those things change when you change the permitted use. So the Planning Commission did apply a binding element, which I haven't gotten to yet. They did apply to the new development plan that any change to what's being proposed will have to go back to Planning Commission. So if for some reason the applicant decides to sell the business to a lithograph shop, that was not in the original approval by the development plan, so they'd have to go back to the Planning Commission and go through a public hearing process. Okay. So the Planning Commission action in October, they recommended the removal and replacement of the original binding elements to the LaGrange City Council. The Planning Commission approved the development plan for a vehicular cars and display business. that will have space for 12 cars and a 900 square foot office and a 900 square foot detailing bay. Did want to make the note that no vehicle repair services will be offered at this location. This is, and I know a couple of people had questions about adjoining property owners, making sure that they were protected, particularly Shepherd of the Valley, which is the Miami Lutheran apartment complex, as well as the York Cliff Apartments. They did reach out to me several times during the Planning Commission process, and they, as you can see in this email, were fine with what the applicant was proposing. They did just want to make sure that there were vegetative screening and that the lighting would not protrude onto their property. So these were the binding elements that the Planning Commission applied to the development plan. So again, what they did was they recommended to the LaGrange City Council that the original binding elements from 1997 be struck, which is what they're asking you to approve today. And then on the development plan, which typically a legislative body does not see, they applied these binding elements to ensure that the property, that the properties around it would be adequately protected. So, number one, there shall be no junk cars or vehicles stored on the property. All comments or concerns stated at the TRC meeting are to be addressed at the construction phase. Basically, those comments and concerns were about stormwater, and those cannot really be addressed until construction. Vegetative screening is required to be provided on the south and east sides as required. Stormwater control to be provided subject to the approval of LaGrange Public Works and the county engineer. Exterior lighting will be directed toward downward and shall not trespass onto adjoining properties. And the last one, there shall be no major changes to the development plan presented at the October 24th, 2017 meeting without approval by the Oldham County Planning Commission. So a major change would be a change in use. If they decided to come back with some other use that's in C3, they would have to come back to the Planning Commission for review.
I'd like to ask a question on this one. Can you clarify what a junk vehicle is? Not that I don't like my neighbor's car, but
Well, if you think about the use of the property, it's supposed to be vehicular sales and display. So if they have a car that's not running or
unlicensed or
they
something.
need to replace a wheel or something of that nature, that needs to be inside of the building where they're making those changes, the detailing. It cannot be stored outside.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Brooke, on number 5, I think you read it correctly, but it might be typed wrong.
It should be directed downward.
So
not
downward is
toward.
actually the true part of the amendment, and it's just a
Yes.
typo? Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
The applicant's justification for amending these binding elements, which was included in their application, states that the general character of the area has been changed, the zoning practices have been changed, and the binding element limiting permitted uses is an encumbrance to the property because it restricts the land's development potential and causes hardship for the landowners. I did want to just go ahead and show you the proposed development plan. You can see that they're going to use that existing access off of Highway 53 that serves York Cliff Apartments. There is in green the 15-foot property perimeter landscape buffer that goes around that entire perimeter that will protect the York Cliff Apartments and Miami Lutheran housing on that side. Yeah, so this is, in this direction is Highway 53. Yeah, this is that access that serves York Cliff that runs off of 53. This is York Cliff Apartments, this tract over here. You can see it's kind of difficult. The black, this is that tract. This is the tract in question. It's outlined in black. So the York Cliff Apartments are here to the north. Yeah, so 53 is down here. You can't see it, but 53 is down here. And this is that entrance, that private access easement that serves those apartments. So this is vacant currently. This is their proposed development plan, which the Planning Commission approved, dependent on your approval of removing the binding elements.
With the side on 53, because if you're driving through there now, I guess it's elevated. so it's kind of hard to see anything up there. Would it be, I guess, graded to where you could see the vehicles that would be proposing to sell?
That would be a question for the applicant. I haven't looked close enough at, I don't think they've actually submitted a grading profile
Gotcha.
or anything at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
But if you read the minutes, they did speak of, that most of their business was gonna come from online sales, that they weren't trying to necessarily attract people coming from Highway 53,
Retail.
like a normal, auto display and sales use.
Is there any requirement in there that there's a lot of trees right along the 53 side of this property. Is there a requirement in there that those stay, or would they be free to take them down?
There's not a requirement that requires them to keep that tree line there along the front. There is a requirement that they have to buffer, that they have to buffer from the apartments. So they are going to buffer back here. I know that this is the reserve for detention, so there will be some removal of trees. But any use, even if it was a veterinary hospital that went in there, we couldn't require them to keep the trees there. Yes.
You mentioned that you talked to the Lutheran home, but did anybody talk to the York Cliff apartment residents or any part of that? Because they're going to be really.
We are required to notify anyone of a public hearing, so I did notify the management of York Cliff Apartments. I didn't speak directly with any of the tenants there. That's not required by KRS 100, and it would have been difficult to get every single person's contact information. I know that the applicant, which you can ask the applicant at a later date, but the applicant did speak with the manager and tried to work out some issues with fencing and landscape buffers and lighting to make sure that those residents are protected.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and you can see there the yellow dots there are the lighting poles that are proposed. So pretty far away from those perimeters and should be facing that parking lot. So they shouldn't be shining into the apartment complexes. This is that private access easement. So this is the property in question. They'll have an access up this hill. And these are obviously the York Cliff Apartments. This is the north view on 53 from that private access easement. And as you pointed out, there is a significant row of trees that fronts this property on Highway 53. This is just another view going up through the private access easement. And this is the north view looking from the property in question out towards 53. It's a view of York Cliff Apartments. And again, the applicant is required to install a fence and vegetative screening between the apartments and the proposed use.
Could you answer who would take care of the maintenance of the shared part of the easement for the road?
That might be a better question for the applicant.
Okay.
Since it's a private access easement, the county and the city don't really have any say over that.
Okay.
That'll be typically a maintenance agreement is filed, and I don't know what they've worked out with the applicant, but I do know that they have access off of that property. And this is the south view Lutheran housing. And again, there will be a fence and vegetative screening required between this property and that property.
Did it say how high a fence? What type of fence?
6 foot tall privacy fence. So privacy fence typically doesn't have any, you can't see in between the poles. So a lot of times it can be like wood or aluminum.
Brooke. So right now, the existing zoning is C3. You're not asking for a zoning change, basically just a binding element adjustment or to be released, right, to be removed?
Yes, we're just asking, the planning commission recommended that all the binding elements associated with the original zoning change be released.
Just because of this one particular business, because it's not zoned for that? Because what used to be there was a vet office and kennels?
There was never a veterinary office ever put in here. Dr. Rainey was the applicant at the time requesting the zoning map amendment in 1997. He was thinking about moving his business to this location. It didn't work out, and he's held on to this property, and I don't want to speak for him, but if you look in the minutes, he did testify that he had some trouble selling it because of the restricted uses. Because it's zone C3, but the only permitted use that you're allowed according to these binding elements is the veterinary hospital, in addition to the ones in C1.
But if we remove the binding element, we're basically we're opening it up to whatever C3 is.
Yeah, but again, it was rezoned to C3. So you don't see very many of these
Right.
rezonings go through, but only allowing one use in that zoning classification. I'm not sure that would, you may ask your attorney, but I'm not sure that would hold up in court nowadays. So again, the city council action tonight would be either to accept the planning commission's recommendation to remove those existing binding elements from 1997, or you can choose to hold the public hearing next month in February and either adopt the resolution at that time or adopt the ordinance that is basically rejecting the planning commission's recommendation.
One more question. If we did have a public hearing and a second reading, whether or not we voted for resolution or ordinance next month, would there be a hearing? Would there be an opportunity to hear from the applicants and any interested parties regarding this
Yes.
situation? Okay. And
Yeah.
there would not be tonight, correct? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we would, for an ordinance, we're required to notify all the adjoining property owners and put a notice in the newspaper. So I would notify all of the adjoining properties, just like I did for planning commission, of the meeting of next month.
If we want to consider the resolution, is there anybody here tonight that would want to come forward? Or can we ask for people to come forward tonight?
I know the applicant is here. I don't know if technically
Yeah, I don't know
they're
legally or
allowed to
technically what we can do, but I
That's- I think probably would be a question.
If
for
someone
your
was here to
attorney.
speak in favor or against, I wouldn't want to go forward with the resolution if we didn't have a chance to hear from them. So can we, or what's the law?
Public hearing.
If you want to hear from the applicant and adjoining property owners, then you need to set up a notice for public hearing. If you're going to accept the recommendations of the Planning Commission without a public hearing, you can do that by resolution tonight, or you can do it by resolution in February. But you will run out of time. If we get,
Am I precluded from speaking at this meeting?
at this moment, you are, yeah.
Okay, because all your questions can be answered if you just let me open my mouth.
Beach, we understand that, but there's,
I don't think
there's,
you do,
no,
because
we do
you
understand, and
run this through
Beach,
for
you're gonna have to wait, I don't chair this meeting, but you're gonna have to wait to be recognized by the chair.
You don't chair the meeting.
I don't chair this meeting.
The guy sitting next to you does, and he's not telling you to shut up.
I haven't told you to shut
Well,
up, Beach.
Beach, we can't have it's not a public hearing. I need to explain that to you. So, I mean, it's up to the council. I mean, if they want to have a public hearing and hear from applicant, then it's going to have to be done by an ordinance. And I explained this to you, that it would have a first reading of the ordinance tonight, and then we'd have the second reading and a public hearing in February. That's just a procedure. This is a very unusual situation. It's pretty simple to me that the property's been sitting there since, what, 79?
97.
I mean, 97, I'm sorry, since 97. And the only thing it can be used, the only thing that property can be used for is a veterinarian clinic and kennel. So
In
Dr.
addition
Rainey's
to
had
the
this property
C1.
for that
I
long,
want to make that clear.
and he can't do anything with it, because there's not gonna put that on there, so.
A lot of it's just legal issues that need to be explained that aren't being explained properly, had nothing to do with the facts.
You know, that public hearings are for facts. You know, you guys need to understand the law on this, and this is we've been trying to do this for 7 months, okay? I mean, this is going on, and now you're talking about wanting us to come back and have a public hearing. We've already had a public hearing in front of the planning.
No, we're not in public hearing, Beach. We're
We're the one in the planning commission that's intended for this, okay? And you know, to answer your question, the property owners next door have been notified. They've given sworn statements. They're in the record. You just haven't had a chance to read your own record. My question is, if we put this off to next month, are you going to be like me and you go home tonight and you put this in a box and you don't pick it up again for 30 days? And we're going to address it then? Or can we just address it?
Beach, that's up to the council, whatever they decide to do. So, you know, that's the way the system runs.
Get his business started. They're here. The family's here. They're brought his father from, you know, another side of the world. I mean, it's.
I understand, Beach. It's the council's decision here, so we've given them both opportunities to decide what they want to do. That was the direction given to the city attorney to give each one, so the council could decide what they want to do.
I don't know. Y'all do what you want. We'll come back if you want. We're all here, you know. We've already had a public hearing. Glad to tell you what happened.
We did discuss this a little bit last month. I was kind of confused as to why we did have a resolution and an introduction to the ordinance on here. Because I personally, when I saw this on there, I thought we were here to make a decision as well.
You can make a decision with the resolution. If you want to take the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that's what their recommendations are, just to get rid of the binding element that allows the gentleman to go ahead with his plan that has already been approved by Planning and Zoning.
And to me, that seems pretty simple.
It is simple. It's very simple.
I mean, I don't know what we're arguing about. I mean,
I don't know either, because it's very simple.
Why don't we just
And if
settle it?
if he decides to not do an automotive sales of what he's doing, then he's got to come back to Planning and Zoning. And even if he buys a property, he's still got to come back. If you don't do what he said they've approved, he's got to come back to Planning and Zoning before anything else can be done.
yeah, this could have been over 20 minutes ago. We would have just gone
My
forward with it.
hesitancy on it is if we remove the binding element, we've opened it up to anything in C3, which I understand a change in the business would have to go back to planning and zoning, but feasibly, a fast food restaurant that follows all of the rules could then be put there. So that's where I'm hesitant with this. I don't mind the proposed business at all. And if we can, there was one wording in there where we would replace the binding element with another. If we replace it with another, then I can move forward with it. But I just don't necessarily like the idea that we're opening it now up and then I've realized it has to go back to planning and zoning, but it wouldn't come back to us. So then we don't know what would go there.
Typically, though, the legislative body does not review any development plans or any uses that are proposed. They review a zoning change.
Right, we review zoning changes.
In 97, the zoning change was approved.
I know.
Unfortunately, the binding element was added, which made this a confusing case.
Right. And I agree. And I'm just one person. I always get hung up a little bit on the zonings, and I don't necessarily.
Brooke, can she put a binding element on there that would make her feel comfortable?
If you want to add binding elements, it's my understanding that you have to go through the ordinance process, correct?
And one other thing I just wanted to add, and everybody's got their opinions, and I appreciate that, but, planning and zoning is one body. They make a decision, they bring it to us, and they want us to make a decision. At the same time, if we want to make a decision, we should feel comfortable with the fact that we want to get information from all of the parties, have a hearing if we decide to do that. If you want us involved, then we should be able to do that. That's just my opinion. I'd like to hear from all the parties, and I share Ann's concerns as well. And not that I want to reject this. I commend these individuals for wanting to start a business in our city, and I'd love to hear more about it. And if it works out and we can get it done, let's do it. But that's my opinion.
Could do a binding element, no more auto parts stores. Just kidding.
council, y'all need to discuss it or make a decision on what you want to do, because it's either one or. It's the only choice we got, so.
Well, Mr. Emery, how do we determine what we're going to do? I mean, it's like we can't make a motion to move forward with one, can we? Is that what we do? Because if so, I'd make a motion to move forward the reading of the ordinance 2008. That would, I mean, I don't know if that's the appropriate procedure, though.
Well, that's a fine option. I mean, I don't have any particular problem reading that into the record for you, if that's...
Well, no, I'm just not sure the procedure, what we're going to do.
They all decide to do that, or?
Well, the agenda's already written, okay? So you don't have to rewrite the agenda. But, you know, a resolution can fail for lack of a motion to accept after it's been read. An ordinance reading on a first reading just gets read, and that's it. And so, you know, procedurally, we know what we need to do once the choice is made, but I have to hear from this council, because this is your council meeting, as to whether or not we're going to read into the record the resolution, or if we're going to read into the record the ordinance. And it's possible I read both of them into the record. I mean, it's just entirely up to you all to decide what next steps you're going to take as a council.
Well, could Shannon make the motion to approve the resolution? We make a vote on the resolution. If it fails, we read the ordinance. If it passes, it's done.
True.
Okay, I'll make a motion for Resolution 2-2018, a resolution to accept a revised development plan and amendment of binding elements.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Our motion to approve the resolution or for you to read the resolution? Just so we're clear.
Have to ask her.
Well, that makes a difference.
Because we would like an opportunity to vote, and we don't usually vote on resolutions. It's just a, right?
No, you vote on resolutions,
say-
always.
All in favor.
Yeah.
But are we going to do a roll call?
We should.
You can make a motion for that.
Can I make a motion that we do a roll call for the resolution? Please?
Ask Miss, your
yeah, 'cause if
colleague
we
to your
do,
right if that's
Can
okay
we
to
make
amend
Can I
that.
make a motion to
Yes, 'cause we
amend?
make a motion for this resolution, if the vote fails, and we can go, or even, actually, if we go to if we go to the ordinance, this is only gonna be the first reading. So at the second reading, if anyone's opposed or anyone needs to come forward, they're gonna be able to anyway the next month, right?
When the people would be able to come forward and they're not here today. That's part of the issue.
People that, right. But she's already gotten information from some of the neighbors, already gotten letters and talked with them, and they're all okay with it, is what she was saying earlier. She had emails.
They had a public hearing at Planning and Zoning.
And they
Right.
had a public hearing at Planning and Zoning, and they gave people the chance to come forward then.
Right.
And everything there has been okay, so this is just the final holdup. So I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution to accept the revised development plan and amend the binding elements with a roll call.
You ready for me to read this into the record, Mayor?
Did we get a motion and a second for the resolution? Somebody make a motion and a second? We did.
We did.
So then we
Tad.
read the resolution and we call for the vote, right?
Right.
Go.
City of LaGrange, Kentucky, Resolution 2, Series 2018, a resolution to accept a revised development plan and amendment of binding elements, whereas the mayor of the city of LaGrange and its city council has the authority pursuant to the provisions of KRS Chapter 83A and 100 and other applicable law to review proposed requests from the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission to the city, and whereas the city council recommends that the mayor take such necessary steps to accept the recommended revision to the development plan and amendment of binding elements from the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission. And whereas said application and the recommendation of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission has been reviewed and considered thoroughly by the mayor and the city council, a motion to approve the amendment to the development plan and binding elements was made because it will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulation because the character of the area has changed per testimony of the applicant regarding existing land uses with the vicinity. Zoning practices have changed to isolate binding elements from the motion, and the existing restrictions place an undue hardship on use of the property. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of LaGrange, Kentucky, 1, that the City Council does hereby accept the applicant's requests and will accept the recommendations from the Board of Adjustments concerning the subject property and does hereby accept in full by reference all the board's findings and decisions as well, adopted and approved this 3rd day of January 2018.
Thank you, Steve.
And Mayor, I would ask that we, of course, attach the Planning Commission's documentations
Yes, sir.
to the resolution.
Stephanie, you want to do a roll call vote? Got a motion and a second, so we,
Jason?
No.
Stephanie?
No.
Shannon?
Yes.
Trey?
No.
Jean?
Yes.
Ann?
No.
Tad?
Yes.
4 no, 3 yes.
You ready for me to, somebody's going to have to introduce the ordinance so that I
yeah.
can.
I need someone to introduce ordinance 1, 2018.
Mayor, I'll introduce ordinance 1, 2018, an ordinance revising a development plan and an amendment to a binding element that was attached to the original zoning map of the subject property in the city of LaGrange.
City of LaGrange, Kentucky ordinance number 1, 2018, an ordinance revising a development plan and an amendment to a binding element that was attached to the original zoning map of the subject property in the city of LaGrange. Whereas on January 3, 2018, the city of LaGrange, the LaGrange City Council did conduct that's a typo. That's going to be February 6th, 5th, February 5. To conduct a public hearing on the recommendations of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission for a revision of a development plan and an amendment to a binding element that was attached to the original zoning map for the subject property commonly known as Sky Automotive LLC, located in the 1200 block of North Highway 53, LaGrange, Kentucky 40031. Whereas on October 24, 2017, the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend that the binding elements from 1997, docket 2692, be removed, and that those binding elements be amended and be approved as set out in the Commission's findings and decisions concerning the revised development plan. Whereas the LaGrange City Council did review the recommendation of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission and conducted a public hearing to receive additional evidence and comments. Whereas the LaGrange City Council did vote to deny the recommendations of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission, adopting the findings and reasons set forth in support thereof, which are summarized here. And whereas the LaGrange City Council voted to deny the applicant's request to amend the binding elements for the property, docket PZ 17034, now therefore be it enacted and ordained by the City of LaGrange, Kentucky as follows. The property located in the 1200 block of North Highway 53, LaGrange, Kentucky, and more particularly described in docket PZ 17034, the property shown and described docket PZ 17034 from the date of passage and publication of this ordinance shall continue to bear the zoning classification of C3 Commercial General Business District. The findings and reasons adopted by the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission on docket PZ 17034 for the development plan revision and binding elements, which were recommended to the City of Council, to the City of LaGrange, were not adopted by the LaGrange City Council at its meeting on February 5th, 2018. This ordinance shall take effect upon its passage, approval, and publication according to law. I will recommend that we not only have this ordinance back on the docket, but that in the event that the ordinance does not pass, that we have Resolution 2, 2018 available for reconsideration at the next meeting.
Can I ask how this ordinance got phrased in the negative?
He's got,
Excuse me? How did this ordinance get phrased in the negative? It's gone from a motion to adopt to a motion to reject with no facts, no evidence, and somebody's drafted a law. Now it's gone from a resolution to a law that so now you have to vote against this motion and then have the actual ordinance rewritten at the next meeting in which you adopt it. This ordinance should be written so that you adopt this motion as opposed to you reject it. You understand what you're doing? This thing is going down the tubes because of procedural issues. And this man's livelihood is at risk. This is not a game here. And I'm sorry I'm losing but there should be two ordinances should have been written. And I used to be the city attorney for other places too, so I know how this works.
Sir, you need to sit down. If you know how it works and you know you can't, if you're recognized by the chair, you can't stand up and talk.
I can't.
No, sir. You need to sit down and leave.
All right, I'll leave because I can see that there's no due process here.
So I will notify all adjoining property owners. I'll put a notice in the newspaper. This will be a public hearing next month. You can choose to adopt the resolution, which approves the Planning Commission's recommendation, or the ordinance, which rejects the Planning Commission's recommendation. I'll see you in February.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mark. See, we ready for 14?
Yeah, and actually, I'll put this out to the council. We've got a next agenda item, number 14, written determination for disposal of real property on Old Jefferson Street. I've been informed by council for one of the adjoining property owners that there is negotiations occurring between the school board and his client, and I believe their preference is that we postpone reading of this till a future date. Is that still am I understanding correctly, Mr. Baxter? That would be my understanding. I don't know what your readings are. The thing that was proposed for tonight was a written determination to dispose of real property, namely the old Jefferson Street that it is in front of the elementary school. Now, I was approached by Mr. Baxter, and he's written me. We've talked a lot between the last meeting and tonight, and he tells me that because you all are working on this together, he's asked for deference from the council to postpone this to another meeting agenda and not to move forward on a written determination tonight.
Doesn't really matter to me, except that I think Mr. Baxter's concern is what you're doing may not be legal. I don't have that concern because that's not my bailiwick. Well, that was what I was going to talk about. It's up to you. I'm not, I don't know what action we're going to take.
Our action proposed tonight is to make a written determination that the property located between North 6th Street and the junction of Kentucky Highway 146 and North 5th Street at that point of Old Jefferson Street be surplused, and that the Oldham County Education will receive this property by way of a transfer from the city of LaGrange, retaining easements for utilities. So, that's what's on the agenda for tonight. It's not to close the road, it's not to do anything else with the road, it's to determine that it's no longer useful for its original purpose to the city, and that we're going to dispose of it.
So for the sake of avoiding any unnecessary lawsuits, because I'm not in there, I don't think there's.
I'm sorry.
We're preventable. I mean, we're trying to work this out to where both parties are happy. So it's, I don't want him to have to spend money on a lawyer if they feel like y'all are doing something illegal. And I think that's kind of where you're all at. Yeah, so, I mean, to save you all some money, it's not gonna hurt my feelings a whole heck of a lot if we talk this next month. Next month, we'll get that, whatever we need to solve, and we'll go from there. Because once again, I never approach this from the standpoint, it's gonna happen today, it's gonna happen sometime in the future. But more importantly, I'm committed to this working out with good neighbors, because it's gonna work out. That's the whole thing. So if as a representative of the school board, if we can afford it, for God's sake. You guys down the road, we'll do that. That's not a problem. We got.
Greg, if y'all gonna speak, I need y'all to come to the podium before people can, we need to get this done.
This has been a long, drawn-out process. And so my concern has always been from the start is that we're able to do something with that road, and we can't do something with that road until the school board actually has ownership of it. Wayne and I met the other day. We're still working on that because my commitment to you guys, what you have in front of you is just a draft. There's nothing in stone on that, is that we can still work that out. What I am trying to avoid by putting this off to a statement tonight is for you all to make a statement, then decide to pursue legal action that's going to cost him money that he doesn't need to spend, and going to cost you all money that you don't need to spend. So if we want to wait a month, we can get that worked out, and then that's nice and clear, then it happens next month. I would like to ask if we could move that kind of up to the front of the agenda a little bit so that Wayne and I aren't sitting here for multiple hours, But I mean, once again, we never went into this anti-Wayne. We're pro-school, pro getting this fixed so that we can do something that's going to benefit the students of LaGrange. So it doesn't bother me to wait for another month for us to work this out and to get everything nice and tight. Not a problem for me.
So Steve, do we need to make a motion just to table it or nothing?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been read, so it doesn't need to be tabled.
Okay.
I think everybody should know, anybody that's out there, it's basically for the safety of the kids and to make it possible to drive down that road. That's all there is to it. And they're willing to pave it. It's a road. And the most important thing is, I mean, I've been fighting this for a year and a half. The most important thing is to make it safe for the kids that are going to that school. And apparently, it has not been safe because people drive across Wayne's, and I wouldn't do anything against Wayne. We've been known each other for a long, long time. So I don't know what the problem is. I thought it was all worked out, but maybe it
Yes,
isn't.
the problem is, Gene, that actually evidently Wayne and Greg with the school board hadn't come to a agreement on
Yeah,
how they gonna, with this. He said, this is not written in stone, so.
I don't know.
Well, that's because Wayne has some concerns about that we can address. Because once again, whenever we do a school building product, we have to hire an architect. We have one on board, but we hire an architect and they come, they do all that other stuff. And Wayne and I talked the other day, we'll include him in that conversation. We're not trying to hurt his business. That's never been the goal or the plan. And we're not gonna be able to touch that, do anything to it, if you gave it to me tonight. I couldn't do anything until the weather's warm in the summer anyway.
Right.
So I'd much rather to save Wayne money and to save some hassle, let's give us another month because I think we're now on the same page for the most part, that we can get this worked out and come back to you next month and then everybody's happy. And that's our goal. Take care of the problem, make everybody happy.
Are y'all still going by this survey that?
Yeah, the survey's accurate. The survey, to our knowledge, is accurate.
Mr. Mayor, the survey is accurate. The drawing, I think that the overlay portion of it is just a rendering of what they were proposing, and that's the detail that Mr. Kincaid
See,
wants
this
to work
survey
on.
was July 31st, 1995. The one I have in my office still has Albert Harrison and everything on it.
He asked me
My
to take his
concern
name.
was why all this was taken off.
He asked me to take it off. Mr.
Albert
Harrison
did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you don't have a problem with this being used, Albert? Not now. Okay,
Man, my word.
that's all I need. I just want to keep everybody legal. That's all I'm doing here. That's my part of it, so. I just knew your name was on the other one, so I just want to make it clear that, you know, from your point of view. Thank you, Albert.
Are all parties in agreement to wait a month?
Yeah, I mean, once again,
Okay.
I'm trying to save people some
And
money.
That's, I mean, I don't think it matters to us one way or another.
Cars still running up and down the road, coming across, so,
Well, and Wayne's
oh,
got some
nothing
time.
happens in that month.
Well, but and I want to be clear that we can't do anything the next month anyway. I can't
Oh, I
construct
know.
a fence. But Wayne's
mean,
got
next-
cones up right now. He's trying, I mean, we're trying to be good neighbors.
Yeah. I
Sounds
thought
like
y'all
it's
had
it's
already
close.
agreed.
And I'd like to second his recommendation to just move it up a little farther in our progression line, since they waited this long for this meeting tonight.
At this point, we really don't have anything to do. We have to wait on these two people right here.
Right. I've got a meeting with my guy, gonna go see Wayne to work out those fine point details and stuff. And we got some other things we talked about and thought about, so. Like I said, I don't wanna cause anybody any angst. We just wanna solve
Y'all
it.
in agreement, it's fine with me if it's fine with city council, so.
And we're gonna move it up in the agenda next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll put you 10th instead of 15th or 14th.
We got old business next on the agenda. You got any old business?
Just like to remind that there's a ordinance committee meeting on the 17th at 6 o'clock at City Hall.
17th of January.
Yes, sir.
I'd also like to make an announcement. There is a vision committee meeting on January 9th, which is next Tuesday, 5 o'clock in the community center. However, if you are planning on attending, double check with me because I just realized I forgot to reserve a room there. Anyway, we're going to be going over the tabulation for the green space. There were several opportunities within the city through the months of November and December to get people's feedback on the different things that they would like to see in the green space. So we're going to be discussing that and next steps. So 5 o'clock, January 9th, for probably just an hour. Thanks.
Time's your meeting,
6 o'clock. Yes, sir.
6 o'clock, 17th. Thank you. Any more new business, old business, new business, either one?
Didn't I see something where zoning, having a thing at Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on subdivisions and stuff? Didn't it?
It's going to be a meeting for planning and zoning to have a public meeting on their comprehensive zoning ordinance. It's informative, but it's not required.
You can attend if you want to.
Saturday at 9, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I saw, where did I see that?
So they're gonna inform us how they're gonna change it?
I had that down on Saturday, January 13th at 9 o'clock.
I didn't write it down, so.
Oh, but you're right.
I probably got an email on it
Okay.
too.
I think you're right, Ann, it is the 13th.
Of course, I'm right.
I don't know, good Lord. I thought this school thing was gonna be fine.
I can't even get in my email.
Please, second.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thanks.
Second, all in favor?
Hi.
It's January 13th,
January 13th.
9 a.m., right here.
Might need some police. I need some police security. Oh. Frank is staying. We get escorted out, the jury stuff. Well, people.